A pleasant morning to all of you. So, I am your reporter for today. My name is Roselyn Prochina. I am 18 years old and I am from Visit English 1A. So, my topic is all about the language shift and depth. So, before we know what is a language shift and depth, may I read the objectives first? At the end of this report, or the listeners should be able to understand what language shift and that is and how it happens in a community. Identify examples of language shift and language death in real life situations. Recognize the common causes of language shift and language death. Understand the effects of language shift and death on culture and identity. Realize the importance of protecting local languages to preserve culture and traditions. So, let's proceed to our topic. Introduction. Language is an important part of culture and identity. It helps people communicate, share stories, and pass traditions to the next generation. However, some languages change or even disappear over time. This report explains language shift and death in simple terms. So, what is a language shift? Do you have any idea what is a language shift? Well, if you don't, then a language shift is sometimes referred to as language transfer or language replacement or assimilation. So from the word shift, it means transfer or replacement. A language shift is the progressive process whereby a speech community of a language shifts to speaking another language. So, a language shift is where you shift into another language. You use another language. So, you use another language to communicate with others so that you or him or her would would understand each other. Language shift is the process whereby a community of speakers of one language becomes bilingual in another language and gradually shifts allegiance to the second language is called assimilation. When a linguistic community ceases to use the original language, language death is said to occur. So when a lang so so bilingual for the word bilingual, so you have two languages. So a language shift is when you transfer into another language. You use another language. The process where a community of speakers of one language becomes bilingual in another language and gradually shifts allegiance to the second language is called assimilation. So I have my example here. In a community, children grew up speaking their local language at home, but in school and online, they mostly use English. Over time, they become more comfortable speaking English and use the local language less, especially with friends. So, in a community daw, there were children nga nagdako na gyud diha and they speak their local languages. They speak their languages in their home and their community. But in their school and online, they mostly speak English. So, over time, nga mahimo silang komportable sa English, so syempre, dili na nila magamit ang ilang local language, especially when they are with their friends. So, that's what we are called the language shift. So, next is what is a language death? So, from the word itself, death, it means namatay siya or in other words, nawala or extinction. So, Unsa man gid ang language death? So, a language death is also known the language extinction or linguistic extinction. Is a process that affects speech communities where the level of linguistic competence that speakers possess of a given language variety is decreased, eventually resulting in no native and fluent speakers of variety. Language that may affect any language idiom, including dialects and languages. So, a language death, it is the death of a language in a certain community or a country. So, you so because because you use another language over time, the it became a language death. So sa sige nimo gamit, for example, English, sa sige nimo gamit og English, and di na nimo master and dili na kagastorya sa imong local language, therefore ang imong local language is mamatay siya. Diha na mo sulod ang language that, kaya syempre wala naman mo ginagamit ang imong local language, so syempre mamatay na siya, and sa inyong community pod wala na igagamit, so muna na natong ginatawag nga language that. So para mas maintindihan pa ninyo, it happens when a language is no longer spoken by anyone. This usually occurs after a long period of language shift, when the last native speakers pass away and no new speakers learn the language. So, moto kong ingon ga ina. Kung sasigi nimo og gamit og lain nga language and wala na nimo ginagamit ang inyong local language, so sasigi nimo og syempre sasigi nimo og shift og language, mag and mo na mo ginagamit permanente, so syempre kay wa naman mo ginastore imong local language, so magkahinahinay na pud nga mawala ang inyong local language. Magkahinay-hinay na siya og kawala kay wala na may nagstorya, unya wala na poy makatudlo sa mga uban nga generation sa inyong local language. So mao nang ang inyong local language is maadto na din siya sa language that. So, example, if a younger generation completely stops learning the local language and only the elderly still speak it, the language may eventually have no speakers left when the elders pass away. So, moto kong ingon, kung isa ka younger generation and di na ka magsigistorya o di na ka magtuon sa inyong local language, o yung elderly na lang ang magsigi istorya. So eventually kay ang mga younger generation man kay wa man nila gi-learn or wa naman nila na tuon ang ilang local language and wala nila sige og gi istorya. So syempre when ang mga elders is mawala ng mga elders, so syempre ang ilang local language is kay wala naman natudlo sa mga younger generation. So syempre ang elders pagkawala nila maapil na pud og kawala ang ilahang local language kay wala man natulo sa mga younger generation ug sa mga mosunod pa nga younger generation kay lahi naman ilahang language nga ginagamit. So that leads to the language death. So kauban daay sa pagkawala pud sa inyong language is mawala na pud diha ang inyong culture, identity, and ang history sa inyong locality. So the causes of language shift and death. So migration to cities or other countries. So isa sa causes nganong mag-shift nganong mo shift and mamatay ang usa ka language is tungod sa migration. So ang migration is, for example, you're from Philippines and you migrate to the US. So syempre, para magkaintindihan mo sa mga citizens sa US is you need to speak their language, which is English. For example, English. So over time you speak English, so syempre comfortable na ka ana. And then pag mobalik ka sa Pilipinas, sa pila nimo katuig dito sa US nga sige kag istorya og English, pagbalik mo sa Pilipinas, syempre sige na lang ka og English. Kaya naanit naman ka sa US magsige English and mawala na imuhang and murag mawala na imuhang like mawala na ang imuhang nice? Ang imuhang ability to speak your local language. Next is influence of schools and media using a dominant language. So naman kita mga classmates, diba? Classmates, mga teachers, and even sa social media, they use English. So over time sa sige nimo og makipaghalubilo sa ila, syempre murag ma-influence na lang pud kang mag-storya og English. And next is pressure to use a language that gives better jobs or social status. So, pag may story ba tag English kay murag like social siya, dami siya paminawon. So, isa na siya sa mga causes nganong mag-shift ta og language and eventually mamatay ang atuang usa ka language tungod kay nag-shift ta og language. So the effects. Language shift and death can lead to the loss of cultural identity and history. Communities may feel disconnected from their roots when their language is no longer used. So mo to kung giingon gaina. Kung mamatay ang inyuhang language, pero syempre mamatay na po diha ang inyuhang culture identity ug ang history sa inyuhang culture. So to conclude it all, language shift and language death are natural but serious process. They show how social and economic changes affect the way people speak. Protecting and teaching local languages can help keep cultures alive for future generations. So para maiwasan nato ang language shift nga mag-lead sa language death is we need to protect and to teach the younger generations to how to preserve our cultures or to how to keep it alive para sa musunod pang mga generation nga dili siya mawala og ila pang maabtan ang culture nga atong gikadak-an. Language shift is a process and the language death is the result. Tungod sa language death tungod sa language shift is mag-lead siya sa language death. So para maiwasan So I hope you learned something from my topic and thank you for listening and learning.